What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Recher Reacts here late night, man. We are starting at 1:11. It just turned to 1:11 in the morning, so it is technically Sunday morning. But I said I was going live after the Buccaneers game and after UFC 305, and I am here. Let's do this. Follow me on all social media platforms at JRecher. Plenty to get into tonight. Is it still tonight? I'm one of those people. It's still tonight to me. It's still tonight. And yeah, after that Buccaneers loss to the Jaguars, we got to talk about some of the players that stood out. We also have to talk about UFC 305. What a great card. Those last three fights were insane. We'll take a look at that. What the hell is going on with Daniel Jones and the Giants and changes that need to be made for our Tampa Bay Rowdies? We're going to touch on a little bit of everything. So appreciate everybody for hopping on with me tonight. Again, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at JRecher. And if you've never gone onto the YouTube before, head on over there. And yeah, like and subscribe. We need as many people to subscribe as possible. Hit that notifications bell so anytime I go live, you can join me here on the show here. So just making sure everything's saved, everything's shared, everybody knows what's going on. Um, yeah. All right. Here we go. Let's start with the Buccaneers loss to the Jaguars. Now I put standout Bucks here at the bottom of the screen, if you can see it right here. Boom, boom, boom. But it doesn't always mean it's a good thing. So we're gonna start with some good, and then we'll go to some bad. And I think when you start right at the top, you look at the running back situation. If you were concerned at all about the running game after Rashad White, I think through two games, you have to feel pretty good about what the depth is like. And those two guys, and I'm referring to Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, they've made a very strong impression so far in training camp and now through two preseason games against Cincinnati, against Jacksonville. They look good. They both averaged over 4 yards a carry. Tucker 4 of 32, Bucky 6 of 26. I think it's exciting to have the ability to go to a bunch of different guys when you need to be able to run the football. And for a team like the Buccaneers, who've been so bad rushing the last couple of seasons, it's not just about having one guy. It's not just about the improvements in the offensive line. It's not just about the guy who's calling the plays. It's a collective. And I feel so confident about the running game going forward. And I know it's weird to say because they've been so poor the last couple of seasons. But as I mentioned, all of those three things have improved. I feel like you have a much better play caller in Liam Cohen. I feel like the offensive line is really coming together, and you're starting to see, okay, it's going to be Graham Barton there at the center position. It's locked in my opinion. Wirfs, Bredesen, Barton, Cody Malk, and Luke Gedeke. And I anticipate seeing all five of those guys working together in the final preseason game against the Dolphins, the lone home preseason game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Raymond James Stadium. And Coach Todd Bowles has said that we're going to see some of the starters. So, look forward to seeing Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Tristan Wirfs. And I'm excited for that. I'll be in attendance, so I can't wait to see that. But the running attack, again, to be able to see Rashad White do what he's been able to do the last couple of years, he's consistent. It hasn't been great, but I think it's been very good. And he's shown to be a reliable RB1. I don't think that the play of Bucky Irving nor the play of Sean Tucker have given me the belief, all right, it's not Rashad's thing anymore. Uh, but man, it's good to have depth because you just never know. It's the National Football League and injuries happen. And also, you need to change the pace. And Bucky Irving can contribute in more ways than one, if not just the running game. He can also be a kick returner as well. And I would love to see some of these guys. I would love to see Rashad and Bucky in the backfield together. Right? I always think that you fall almost into the trap as a coach or offensive coordinator, just one running back at a time. And I think sometimes put your best, most athletic guys out there. And especially if you get deeper into drives and you got to pull Mike and maybe pull Chris off the field, have some package out there where you have Rashad lined up to your left and Bucky lined up to your right. And I, I just think you keep the defense guessing. Um, that's what's exciting about Liam Cohen is a guy that you could see it in training camp, and you've seen it through the first couple of games. He's not predictable. And was the offense clean tonight? No, I don't think it was the greatest performance whatsoever. But I think you look at some of the play calls and look at some of the plays they were able to execute, and you think to yourself, if Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers starters are out there, it's a different story. So, and I've been kind of uh, throwing this out there of like, just wait, just wait. You're going to see a pass, a touchdown pass from Kyle Trask to Cody Thompson, and then look, we ended up seeing that the lone touchdown, the lone score altogether for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their 20-7 loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Uh, yeah, I think, and we hope John Wolford's okay after taking that hit. But I think Kyle Trask is the number two. I don't think that's really up for debate. I know Coach Bowles is going to say that he wants both these guys to play hard, and I think it's more of a respect thing for John Wolford because he's been in the league and he knows the offense. But I mean, Kyle, you drafted him there for a reason, and I think he's played decently through two games. So I don't think there's a reason why he wouldn't be your number two. Shout out to Cody Thompson, the aforementioned wide receiver who caught the lone touchdown, 5 for 66 with the touchdown. All caught 5 of 6 targets. Tanner Canoe as well, 5 targets or 6 targets, caught 5 touchdowns. He caught 5 passes on 6 targets as well. Um, you look at some of the other guys on the offense, and Devin Culp had a couple catches, Sal Canella had a couple of catches, and you kind of get to the second half of this game tonight, and you're like, all right, we're waiting for the starters. Like, we want to see the starters out there. That's the big thing. Shout out to T Haw or Thaw. Let me know if it's T Haw or Thaw. Appreciate the kind words, but I definitely want to know so I can properly show you some love. Um, but yeah, looking at the rest of the good things, I look at the pass rush and Jose Ramirez. And if you watched Recher reacts after the last preseason game, it's against the Cincinnati Bengals. I mentioned that the one guy that really stood out in the pass rush, and I mentioned this all week on Jay and Zach as well, is that Jose Ramirez was getting close. He was getting close to the quarterback, and you could see. I mean, you could see that sometimes with pass rushers. You can see guys that aren't making any kind of progress, no headway whatsoever, and then you see other pass rushers that you look at and you say, "All right, that guy was getting close. He was getting some pressures. How does he follow that up the next week?" And you saw Jose Ramirez follow his strong week against the Cincinnati Bengals up with an incredible performance tonight with 3 sacks. 3 sacks on the night. And I think the brightest star in this game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we've been clamoring for a guy to really step up in the absence of Joe Ryan Shoyinka and Yaya Dabi at that outside linebacker position. That is one position. I've been saying this for so long. You have to throw numbers at it. It can't just be one guy. It can't just be two or three. Heavily rotational spot there. You need guys that can do it all. You need guys that are just kind of pin their ears back and rush the passer on third and long situation. You need guys that go in there that can stop the run. You need just a full complement of players there. So I think if the Buccaneers had their druthers, it would be Yaya Diaby on one side, and probably JTS on the other side to start the season, with Chris Braswell probably being the guy to kind of, middle of the season take over that outside, starting spot besides or opposite of Yaya Diaby. We kind of saw that last year with Yaya. But if you can get Jose Ramirez in there, you're looking at 5 guys when you look at Yaya and Chris Braswell, JTS, Anthony Nelson, and now Jose Ramirez, and then Marquise Watts as well, who had a sack tonight. Um, that's a real positive sign for the Buccaneers. 5 sacks on the night, 3 coming from Ramirez, 1 from Marquise Watts, and 1 from Uguak. Ooh, easy for me to say. It's late. I'm not even going to try that name again. No disrespect. Congratulations on that sack. But to me, you're going to take a lot of things out of this. I don't know if you could take a lot of things out of this game, but the two big things I took, as well as the positive side, on the positive side, was the rushing attack and the pass rush. Those are the two big things. And you wanted to see it going into this game against the Jaguars, especially about after how putrid it was last weekend against the Cincinnati Bengals. But to be able to see them get 5 sacks, to get the 1 from Watts, to get the 3 from Jose Ramirez, that is a big positive going forward. And now let's see who's going to play in this preseason finale against the Dolphins. Are we going to see Yaya? No. Are we going to see JTS and Anthony Nelson? I think we'll see a heavy helping of those guys. And then Marquise Watts and Jose Ramirez, and let's see how many of the starters for the Miami Dolphins play too, because that factors into it. Can these guys do it against starting offensive lines in the National Football League? Sure as hell hope so. But if you can do that, you're adding another element to this defense that really is something that Todd Bowles is looking for. He's going to call up these crazy ass schemes and blitzes, and he's going to try to do whatever it takes to keep the offense off balance. But man, if he can get home with four, that changes the entire game. I mean, he's been able to be successful in the past without, rushing with four and just really being creative. But just, if you have a full complement of your defense and you can just attack the quarterback and just attack whatever the strength is of the offense in any capacity, yeah, sky's the limit for Todd Bowles in this defense. So that was, the positive. Negative, offensive line, there was kind of struggles up and down. They had big time troubles on third down. Once again, troubles getting off the field on third down, trouble staying on the field on offense on third down. Um, yeah, not the greatest night overall, and we'll see if that changes, next week with the starters getting back in there. But the one thing that's really jumped out to me, that is the missed kicks from Chase McLaughlin. And we've been joking about this in training camp, and I don't know if we're trying to if we jinxed it, or I don't know if we're making too much of this, but I don't know how to feel right now about Chase McLaughlin. I don't know if I should say, hey, he had 93% success rate last year. He was really, really good for the Buccaneers. And the couple of kicks he's missed in training camp is, that's just hiccups. He's missed a field goal kick in the last two preseason games. It's not a big deal. But if you're a Buccaneer fan, if you've been following this team for any length of time, you know what that position is all about. And you know all about guys and counting in their field goals in training camp. Gosh, I made a joke that we didn't have to do that this year, but this week in practice, people are going to be looking at Chase McLaughlin a little bit more. Uh, do the Buccaneers bring in a guy? Like we just saw them bring in a punter last week. Do they bring in a kicker this week to maybe not challenge Chase McLaughlin, but kind of keep him on his P's and Q's of like, hey, man, you got to lock in a little bit here and you got to make some kicks. So I wouldn't say I'm in full fledged panic mode, uh, but I'm definitely going to keep a concerted eye, or I'm definitely going to keep a closer eye on Chase McLaughlin this week in camp than I did when I started camp, and I wonder if other people are going to do that same thing too. Again, not full blown panic mode, not overly concerned or worried, but anytime you see your field goal kicker miss a field goal kick in, two games in a row, you have to start. All right, uh, is this the exception? Is this the rule? Is this just kind of like, all right, hey, he's working out some kinks here, or do they need to bring somebody else in to just, as a precautionary type of thing? Because we've seen it go sideways here in the Tampa Bay area. So I'm not concerned. I'd love to hear what Buccaneers fans out there think about the situation, about Chase McLaughlin missing a couple kicks so far in the preseason. He's missed a couple of kicks in training camp back here in Tampa that we've seen. I'm not in full fledged panic mode yet, but I know there are some fans out there that are kind of wondering, like, what's going on, Chase? Got to pick it up. Can't have this going into the regular season. He was money last year. And if he's not that, they're going to have to look to somebody else. I don't think we're there yet, but certainly something to keep an eye on this week in practice against the Miami Dolphins. So those are kind of the big things that I took away. Don't want to go into too much detail because we want to save some of it for Monday. Biggest takeaways, our opening segment on Jay and Zach starting at noon on WDAE. So let's talk about some other stuff too. The Bucs do plan to release Randy Gregory. We've seen that from a couple of people. First guy I saw tweeted out was our guy Rick Stroud, and Randy Gregory. It's just, brought him in here to be. We were just talking about the pass rush. Brought him in here as that veteran presence. He was going to be one of those numbers. Signed him to a 1 year, $3 million deal, $2 million in incentives, and we've never seen the guy. So we know he's got that issue with getting suspended and with when during his time with the Broncos, and the more and more he wasn't there, it was just like, just out of sight, out of mind. That was the perfect phrase for me. Out of sight, out of mind. I'm not worried about Randy Gregory. You got to worry about the guys that are here. And I have a feeling that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coaching staff feel the same way. We got to focus on the guys that are here. We can't worry about some guy that hasn't even shown up and is getting fined every day. But it's good to finally get some kind of closure on this entire situation. Again, Rick Stroud from the Tampa Bay Times put this out that the Bucs have reached an agreement with him. He'll be released, and the Buccaneers can move on. Now, do they pick up another guy? Do they maybe look at another veteran pass rusher that's out there to kind of add to the mix? I wouldn't be surprised if that happened as we got closer to opening day. But he's obviously not going to have to cost too much, right? You want to keep that cost down. Is it around the 3 million mark that you were going to pay Randy Gregory with 2 million in incentives? Maybe, maybe a guy like Yannick Ngakwe. I mean, I think that would be a nice guy that you can add to the mix. He's a guy that he's been in this league. He's had some success. He's 29 years old, still a free agent, and with them not trading for Hassan Reddick, for them not trading for a guy like Matthew Judon, I don't think it would be the worst thing to kind of spin the tires on a guy like Yannick Ngakwe. You look at his statistics the last couple of seasons, only had 4 sacks last year in 13 games with the Bears. But if you look back at the 2 seasons prior, he had 9.5 with Indy. He had 10 with the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a guy that's had as many as 12 sacks in his career in his second season with the Jaguars back in 2017. So I don't think this is a bad move at all. Now that you have that kind of finality of the Randy Gregory situation, I think Yannick Ngakwe, bringing him in there, adding another number to the mix, I think that just deepens the pass rush. And if you tell me that it's going to be Yaya Diaby and JTS and Anthony Nelson and Chris Braswell and Jose Ramirez and Marquise Watts and Yannick Ngakwe, I just think it makes it even better. Now, does the emergence of some of these young pass rushers give the Buccaneers the thought that, hey, why get Yannick Ngakwe? Maybe we need help in the secondary. We've seen some issues there. Maybe you reach out to a Stephon Gilmore or somebody like that. Um, I don't think you can go wrong either way because we know it works in concert. The pass defense, the secondary, and the pass rush working together. That whatever they decide to do, I'll never be opposed to adding more numbers at those situations. The cornerback situation, the pass rush situation, and I think it's something that the Buccaneers should definitely look at before the season opener, not the preseason finale, but the season opener in a couple weeks against the Washington Commanders. All right, let's talk about UFC 305, and we'll start with the main event and we'll work our way backwards. What an incredible main event between Dricus Duplessis and Israel Adesanya. I made this joke to my girlfriend as we're watching the fight. I said, if the aliens come down here and try to take over the world, these are two guys that we would send to the front line. Yeah, they weighed in at 185, but they're just such talented kickboxers, just absolute badasses. And DDP, what an incredible run that he's been on, beating Robert Whitaker, beating Sean Strickland, now beating Israel Adesanya. Uh, the real champ. This dude is for real. And he was able to go toe to toe with Israel on the feet. He was able to take him down and finished him with a rear naked choke. What a sensational submission from Dricus Duplessis, a well-rounded mixed martial artist. And you saw like Izzy got some shots into. Like that was just such a good fight. Two elite top tier fighters. And even Izzy said at the end of the fight, he was like, "Man, I felt good. I feel like I looked good, and I did too. I mean, that was a freaking barn burner." And it wasn't one of those fights where they were just standing in the middle of the ring and they were just it was like the Max Holloway fight when they was like pointing to the middle and there was like no throw caution to the wind, no type of defense whatsoever. It wasn't one of those fights. It was tactical. It was an intelligent fight. And ironically enough, Izzy, I think, kind of let his guard down right at the end. And he says that he made a mistake down at the end, as DDP was going for the Gable grip and he was able to kind of sink that choke in. But to me, the mistake he made is right before that, he turned his back to Dricus Duplessis. He was trying to avoid the contact and get away, and I get that. But once you turn your back to the guy, a guy that's been sniffing that submission, you saw it in round two, you kind of help him. You kind of that was the doorway, and DDP kicked it open. I do feel a little weird about calling him DDP because the only DDP to me is Diamond Dallas Page. Bang. But Dricus Duplessis, if you're that much of a badass, if you're the reigning defending UFC middleweight champion of the world, I guess you've earned that nickname as well. So, an incredible fight. I'm glad to see that Israel's not going to retire. He's going to stay in the game. But what does he do from here? Does he go up to light heavyweight? That could be an option. Does he stay at middleweight? But who's the fight there? If he's going to stay at middleweight, because I mean, what is it, 8 fights in a row he fought for a title? I don't necessarily want to see him. Does he fight Hamzat? That could be an interesting fight. He's not going to fight a guy like Kamaru, his guy. Um, but yeah, where does Izzy go from here? Because if you're not fighting in title fights, you got to fight big marquee names, right? You got to big money fights because he's still a guy that even without the title, he can still headline a card. He is that enthralling. He is that entertaining. He's a badass, man. He is a legit badass. So shout out to Izzy Adesanya and shout out to Dricus Duplessis for keeping the title going into Western Australia there when there's a lot of fans for Izzy on that side of the world. And he went in there and took care of business. So congratulations to him. That was well deserved. In the co-main event, I was so excited for this fight. Steve Erceg against Kai Kara France. And Steve Erceg is one of those guys that looks like he's going to do your taxes, but he is just such a phenomenal fighter. He's so well rounded. He's so clean with his striking. But you saw Kai Kara France, and he was really, really going for it. And at the end of those combinations, he had some just really, really good movements. And that last punch in those 4 or 5 strike combinations, he was getting close. He was getting close. And the broadcast team was talking about how Ursek didn't do a bunch of big time head movement. He's just slightly moving out of the way. But unfortunately for Steve, that ended up biting him in the ass because Kai Kara France with the left hand over the top put him on his ass. He eventually got up. I thought he did a good job of kind of preventing getting hit, trying to keep Kai Kara France away from him, and then Kara France right through the middle with the right hand. And I thought it was a great stoppage by the referee because that was one of those situations where Ursek had his back turned and it could have got a lot worse. Car France kept raining blows down, but good stoppage by the referee. And this kind of upsets the apple cart in the division there because you think Urseg, all right, he wins this fight, maybe he gets another, opportunity, another crack at the big title. But now we'll see. I mean, that's a huge, huge win for Kai Kara France. 404 at 404 in the first round. Um, and then the rest of the fights on the main card. Looking at Dan Hooker and Mateus Gamrot, I thought Gamrot won this fight. The pre-fight odds had him as the minus 400 favorite, and you look in that first round, he looked like he was going to take Dan down and really do some damage. But Dan Hooker, I got to give him a lot of credit, man. He was battling his ass off. He wins the split decision on home turf or near home turf. And I thought he did a great job of stuffing the takedowns. 5 for 15 was Gamrot on the takedowns. Early on, it was like, oh, Dan's going to be in trouble. Gamrot's searching for that choke. But Dan just kept fighting his way back, fighting his way back. Significant strikes, very close, 65 to 64 for Dan Hooker. Total strikes 88 to 82 for Gamrot. But the big thing to me was the takedown defense of Dan Hooker and the ability that he had when Gamrot went in for the takedowns. I think the referees really liked what Dan Hooker was doing with those elbows to the back, elbows to the side of the head, doing some great job with the body work. Dan Hooker, 24 of 32, only 6 of 8 for Mateus Gamrot. And I was wondering if that fight was going to stay the same way or if Dan was going to win a split decision because of what happened in the fight previously. So shout out for Dan Hooker for winning that fight. He called out Conor McGregor. We'll see how that works. But this fight really jumped off the page because Jairzinho Rosenstruik fought Tai Tuivasa, and the Australian Tuivasa, the people were cheering for him and showed a ton of heart. But Rosenstruik, I thought, won the first 2 rounds, and then the third one, okay, you can give it to either guy. But The one referee gave all 3 rounds to Tai Tuivasa, which is freaking crazy to me to see that type of thing happen. And shout out to the UFC or shout out to the commission. They took that referee off and they they sent him packing. I love that. There's going to be that's the thing when it comes to combat sports is like nobody wants to have that conversation of like, oh, is it rigged? What happened there? Um, there's money. Somebody's got money on this fight. Like, if it goes to the judge's hands, you shouldn't have a sick feeling in your stomach, like, oh man, like somebody's gonna screw this up. But Howie Booth, who had Tui Taivasa winning 3-0, he was scheduled to work the co-main events, but he was pulled from the bout. He's done for the night, and a lot of people are happy with that decision. And I think it needs to happen more, especially when you see it happen on the undercard. If you see just a terrible, egregious decision, now that you have these stats that back them up, like everybody can find this. Like you go on ESPN, they have Fight Center on there. You go on a bunch of other websites where you can go and see the significant strike total and the control time and the takedowns and submission attempts. Like, come on, man. Like it's not even close. You look at the match between these two guys. Just look at the significant strikes. Jairzinho 91 to 37. 91 to 37. That is wild to me. And to think that Tai Tuivasa won all of those rounds. My goodness, what the hell are you looking at? A good job by the commission to get rid of that judge. Not good, no bueno. And then the fight that opened up the main card, Li Jing Lian gets just put to sleep by Carlos Paredes. That's a guy you have to certainly keep an eye out there in the welterweight division. He is a scary looking dude and efficient as all hell. 55 of 84 for his total strikes, all of them being significant strikes. 44 of 70 to the head, 10 of 11 on those light kicks. I watch out. That could be a guy that just comes out of nowhere, and then before you know it, he's fighting in like a title eliminator, and he's vying for the crown, going up against Leon Edwards. So really, really good stuff there at UFC 305. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed it. That was one of those cards. Listen, I waited to do this podcast until that was over. And there's been a lot of times where I've stayed up to do a podcast or something, or I've stayed up to watch UFC cards and they've been terrible. But tonight, it was certainly worth it. Follow me again on all social media platforms at Recher. Hope everybody had a wonderful Saturday. I bet that your Saturday was a lot better than this guy, Daniel Jones. What is going on with Daniel Jones? Coming off the ACL injury, the Giants, they're a team that I don't know how you could look at them and think that they're going to have a good season. There's some good players there. Don't get me wrong. They've invested a lot into their offensive line. Draft picks like Andrew Thomas, John Michael Schmitz Jr., Evan Neal, John Runyon in free agency. So you're trying to fortify the offensive side of the trenches. Defensive side of the trenches, you could argue they have one of the best in all of football with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, all right, you got some, Aziz Olajaris on the team. You got some good players there. But when your quarterback makes these mind-numbing decisions, like you see with Daniel Jones, it's putrid. It's putrid. And he's catching strays from Tom Brady at the Fanatics event. And it seems like he's a guy that just everybody wants to pile on. But you can't be making these decisions after being in the league for this long. Like he's still making rookie mistakes. That pick six he threw tonight was just, it's comical, man. It's comical. Like you just have to laugh if you're a fan of the Giants, like you have to laugh because if you don't laugh, you're probably gonna cry. That guy still, and you can kind of tell why a guy like Brian Daboll was interested in trying to possibly get a rookie quarterback this year because he knows as much as these experienced coaches know what good looks like, they know what not good looks like too. When you say, all right, this guy's got it, and he doesn't have it. Seems like he doesn't have that it factor. I mean, that pass to Jalen Petre, where he took 5 yards. for a pick six was just, just that stuff happens like in a high school football game. That happens in a college football game where it's Alabama against Southern Mississippi State A&M Tech. Like that can't happen with a guy that's a quarterback of a team in the National Football League. Again, Giants fans have to laugh about this whole Daniel Jones situation because if not, that they would cry. If not, they'd cry. Uh, I just don't see how they don't finish in last in the NFC East. It's going to be Philly, Dallas, Washington. I mean, you have to feel so much better about Washington than the Giants with Jaden Daniels there and Dan Quinn, and they go out and they get Wagner, um, Austin Eckler. They have some legit veterans. Um, I'd be very surprised if the Giants didn't finish in last. I mean, they're they're staring straight down the barrel of a 4-13 season. It's crazy to me. It is crazy. Daniel Jones is not the answer. And listen, you're gonna have to eat some of this money at the end of the season. All right, fine, rock with them. Do what you got to do. But Daniel Jones is not it, and I don't think that's should be a surprise. Rowdies fall at home 2-0 to Loudon United. We were there tonight. I was actually in attendance there at Al Lang watching the Buccaneers game on my phone, trying to do a little bit of everything because I got to make it work. You know how it rolls. Um, Changes need to happen when it comes to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. I know they were undefeated in 6 straight games, but you look at the performance tonight, and there's just something not vibing with the team. There's something not vibing with the club right now. And listen, Cal Jennings has had such a great year, but it seems like the only time that they can get him the ball is this big ball over the top, and he has to go chase it. There's a lack of creativity right now in the midfield, and it's something that needs to be fixed if this team has any uh, chance to go deep into the postseason. And you look at some of the players that they have in the starting lineup, and then you look at some of the players they have on the bench. And I'm rocking the hat here. I love my Rowdies. I support them. Um, but things have to change. Things have to change with my Rowdies. And I look at the kid, 17-year-old Nate Worth. He comes onto the pitch and he shows class and he shows patience. And I really truly believe that he needs to see more time. Damian Rivera is a threat down the left wing. He needs to be in the game and he needs to start. That guy needs to be out there. Leo Fernandez, my guy, former league MVP. He didn't even get in the game tonight. So usually you would look at how, and we know he's dealt with injury, but I actually, and I know like some people would be upset that he didn't get in the game, especially when you lose 2-0. But when Blake Bodley gets, his second yellow card for just foolishly running into the goalkeeper and getting a red card, you go down to 10 men, you're down, and you need some of those young legs out there running after these guys. You're going to be chasing the game literally and figuratively. So I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world. Um, but man, if this team really wants to get like on a, I'm sick of the draws. I'm sick of the concession of goals. They got to change some things. And I think Leo Fernandez needs to be back in the starting lineup. I think Damian Rivera needs to be in the starting lineup. I don't necessarily know about Nate Worth. I wouldn't go that far because he is a young kid. I don't think you want to overexpose him, overwhelm him. But I think he's a guy that needs to come into the game earlier. Like he needs to come in the game at the 60-minute mark. Um, Hopefully Jordan Doherty isn't out for long. I know he left the game as a precaution because he was dealing with a hamstring injury, but Eddie Manjoma comes in his place, and I thought he was a spark as well. There's guys that are sparks, and I know you need some of those guys kind of off the bench to be able to give you that. We saw it with Josh Perez a lot last year, but I think your starting 11 really needs to adapt and change a little bit, and there needs to be a little bit more control in the middle of the pitch, and there needs to be a little bit more creativity. That's right off the rip. Can't be falling into these lapses and hoping that Robbie Nielsen can go into the locker room at halftime and change everything around and make these adjustments and light a fire under these guys' ass. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. It needs to improve. That team is too talented. They have too many good players on it, and you don't want to waste performance night after night from Jordan Farr, who's one of the best goalies, if not the best goalie in the USL. So I love my Rowdies, but they need to get better. They need to improve, and hopefully that you can listen to some of my advice, and hopefully we'll get one of the Rowdies guys with us in studio this week on WDAE. It's actually iHeart Day next Saturday night, so cannot wait for that. All right, it's going to wrap it up for me. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms uh, at Recher. Um, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're checking me out on YouTube. If you're going back and watching this after the fact, appreciate you. Still subscribe. Hit that notifications bell. I'm going to get back on this tomorrow night if there's some big news. I think Thursdays and Sunday nights might be the nights that I kind of take off. But it depends. Like if something big happens tomorrow, if the Rays sweep the Diamondbacks, and shout out to the Rays winning 2 in a row, maybe I'll pop on here as well. Definitely Monday night after Monday Night Raw and Friday night as well after Friday Night SmackDown. Some big stuff going on. But make sure you follow my guys, Zach on the mic and James Donlin as well. And of course, Jay and Zach every day at noon, Monday through Friday on WDAE. All right, it's 1:47. I got to hit the hay. Oh, appreciate everybody for tuning in and go get some sleep. We'll see you tomorrow night right here on Recher Reacts. Peace out.